This is an accessibility assessment of the Elizabeth Rogers Community Garden in Vancouver, British Columbia. The assessment is built on universal design principles, specifically equitable use, flexibility in use, tolerance for error, low physical effort, as well as size and space for approach and use. Starting with size and space, I noticed that none of the garden entry points were accessible by wheelchair. The main entrance, while it swung open easily, narrowed immediately upon entry into the garden. A second entrance was off a grass field with no path for wheelchairs. The third entrance, again, has a grassy surface. Wheelchairs being unable to enter the garden is the main design challenge, followed by the narrow and uneven paths inside the garden. What is the next best step to improve accessibility? Well, one of the universal design principles says to avoid segregating any users. Can this guideline be sacrificed as a first step towards greater accessibility? Rather than continuing to focus on what makes this garden inaccessible, here are several solutions to build an accessible section. Step 1. Pick the best entrance. My choice was the second entrance. It's close to the road, close to the shed, and it would have access to a garden tap as well as the compost bins with a bit of tweaking. Step 2. Make sure the entrance is accessible with a door that swings open. Fill in the path entrance with an easily compacted walkway material such as gravel or wood mulch. Brighten up the entrance with a sign to indicate its location. Step 3. Widen the pathways in the accessibility section by removing obstacles. You also want to change the path material throughout this section to make the surface flatter and to provide better traction. Step 4. The next step is to raise several of the beds. Looking through the garden, there are already beds with higher walls, so it wouldn't be too hard to raise them another foot or so. The water tap could also be raised. Ideally, a new tap would be installed close to the shed with an easy-to-use nozzle attached to the hose. Step 5. One of the last design additions would be to widen the shed door so that garden tools can be accessed. The shed already has a nice little ramp for easy entry. With these 5 steps, the Elizabeth Rogers Community Garden could become more accessible. The question at this point might be why. Why should we think about accessibility in community garden design? Well, an early use of the word community was to describe a body of people who had equal rights. It was a term used to unify people with less privilege. Privilege can be thought of as a person's ability to access resources, and so low access is a lack of privilege. The community garden concept is to create access to garden plots, to give people with no yard the opportunity and privilege of gardening. In this way, creating a community garden that is inaccessible creates less privilege in a specific group, people with mobility needs. So actually goes against the purpose of building a community garden. However, by keeping universal design principles in mind when creating a garden community, equity and by extension access can remain defining features of these spaces.